Hey everyone, welcome back to Animal Kingdom Wonders. Today, I'll be guiding you through how to care for baby chicks from the day they hatch until they grow into healthy adult chickens. I'll be sharing the methods that have worked well for me in the past, but I always encourage you to do thorough research before getting your own chicks. In this video, I'll cover the different stages of chick development, the ideal environment for each phase, and how to ensure they grow up strong and healthy. This is our fourth batch of baby chicks, and so far, everything has been going smoothly. Some of the steps I take might be a bit more cautious than necessary, but I believe that putting in a little extra effort early on makes a big difference in their overall health. Before bringing baby chicks home, I like to have everything set up and ready for them. This is the brooder setup I use. I prefer a plastic container over a cardboard box because it doesn't absorb moisture and is easier to clean. In the first few days, I use paper towels instead of shavings or bedding to prevent the chicks from accidentally eating the bedding, as they aren't sure what food is yet. Some people still use newspapers for bedding, but I don't recommend it because the slippery surface can affect the chicks' legs, and the ink contains chemicals that might be harmful to them. If you're getting your chicks from a hatchery or through mail order, they will likely arrive in a small box like this. After a long journey, it's important to get them settled in and comfortable as soon as possible. I also always add Save a Chick electrolyte mix to their water to ensure they get the essential nutrients they need for a strong start. As soon as you bring your baby chicks home, it's crucial to make sure they have access to water and electrolytes right away. After spending a few days without food or water, their digestive systems may not be fully functioning yet, so adding electrolytes helps them recover more quickly than just plain water. This is a small investment but definitely worth it to give them a healthy start. I've linked all the products mentioned in this video below, along with a detailed blog post that walks you through every step. Be sure to check it out and make sure your water setup is properly leveled, because if it's not, the water could spill all over the brooder, which can be harmful to the chicks and create an unhealthy, damp environment. Since many of these chicks may have never had water before, it's really important to guide them to the water source. When taking them out of the box, I gently dip their beaks into the water so they can recognize where to drink from. It might seem a little strange at first, but if done correctly, it helps the chicks quickly learn to hydrate themselves. Be careful to avoid getting water into their tiny nostrils. When I see them moving their beaks after tasting the water, that's a great sign that they're drinking and recognizing it as something beneficial. I always make sure to do this one chick at a time so that none of them are overlooked. Once I set them down, I watch to see if they return to the water on their own. If they do, that's a good indication that they've figured it out and can now drink independently. Next, I introduce their feed. The type of feed I use is starter grower with about 20% protein, which supports rapid growth and provides the essential nutrients they need. I'll link the feed in the description box for you to check out. Ensuring a proper diet and hydration from the beginning will help the chicks grow strong and minimize any health issues during their first few weeks. I will also share a chick brooder with you, as I do not use a heat lamp when raising baby chicks. Instead, I use a much better alternative, which is these chick brooders that use radiant heat instead of a heat lamp. They are much safer and cozier for the chicks, and really, they are a great improvement over outdated heat lamps. As you can see, I like to keep mine on an incline to create a heat gradient, allowing the chicks to choose exactly where the spot with the perfect warmth is. It's always satisfying to watch. After their long journey, all the chicks are eating, drinking, and sleeping happily. You'll see a chick fall into the water at the back, but that's why we use very small chick waters and feeders, so they can't drown in them. Music. Here is the chick food I use to start them. It's medicated and has high protein to support their growth. And here is the chick grit I use, which is much smaller than adult chicken grit. I just sprinkle a little bit on their food every few days like this. If you're new to chickens, grit is basically indigestible rock-like substances that help break down the food in their gizzard, which is what they use to chew instead of teeth. As you can see, the chicks quickly discovered the brooder, and they are very happy and warm underneath it. The brooder more closely mimics a mama hen than a heat lamp, and it's much cozier for them too. If you have other pets, it's very important to train them to be safe around chickens. I made a whole separate video about how we trained our dogs to be safe around chickens. Chicks, like most dogs, wanted to eat them the first time we got them. However, after 4 years, they have actually become protectors of the chicks in the backyard. Music. We keep our chicks inside for the first few weeks. I know everyone is curious about the right age to introduce chicks to the outside. The truth is, there's no specific age for chicks to go outside, it depends more on the weather and their age. So, I will share a chart below for you that shows the age of chicks and the temperature they can handle when outside. Since the weather was warm, I believe these chicks were about 2 to 3 weeks old when we introduced them outside, which we always do in this small pen. It's really important to ensure that they have access to both shade and warmth while outside, or at least be supervised, so if the weather changes drastically, they can be brought back inside. Some people introduce bedding just a few days after getting the chicks, but I prefer to wait until they are a couple of weeks old. At this point, I switch from paper towels to bedding in their brooder. I also increased the height of the radiant heat brooder a little bit. As you can see, it's still on an incline so they can choose the gradient of heat they want, but I raised it up a little since they don't need as much heat at this stage. It's always fun to see their reaction when we first introduce them to the bedding. At first, they're a little unsure, but they usually settle into the bedding pretty quickly. One reason I wait a little longer to introduce bedding is because the chicks love to kick it around, which means they end up kicking it into their food and water. As you can see, I raised the water a little bit, which helps a bit, but really, there's no perfect solution at this stage of chick care. You usually have to come to the brooder a few times a day to make sure their food and water are cleared out of the bedding. I typically change their food and water 2 to 3 times a day. Now, the chicks are about 5 weeks old, so we start taking longer trips outside. In fact, weather permitting, I like to keep them outside pretty much all day at this point. This is the setup we use for keeping our chicks outside. These pens are great, and the covers are very important to keep them protected from airborne predators, so I'll share the links to the pens and covers below for you. If you're not giving your chicks long trips outside yet, it's really important to make sure you have a spacious brooder. The size of the brooder I'm using wouldn't work for this many chicks at this stage if they weren't spending so much time outside. At this point, they really are just in the brooder at night to keep them safe from nighttime predators, but they spend pretty much all day in these 2 pens with food, water, and plenty of stimulation from the grass and dirt. Of course, all of this depends on the weather. If you live in a place where it's still quite cold outside, since they aren't fully feathered, it would, at this point, it's not safe to do this with them. This footage was taken in July in Wisconsin, so the weather outside was really warm for them. Since we already have mature chickens, the next step is to introduce the chicks to the older hens. I made sure to acclimate the chicks to the outdoors so it's not too shocking for them. The only extra step I take is moving their pen closer to the older hens so they can safely get to know each other through the gate. In fact, I made a separate video on how to safely introduce chicks to older hens, and I'll link that video for you below. Honestly, you could just throw the chicks in with older hens, but it's not uncommon for older hens to bully or even kill chicks, so while you can take that risk, I've put so much time and resources into raising these chicks that I think it's worth taking a few extra steps to make sure everything goes smoothly and no one gets hurt. If you're curious about how we trained our dogs to be safe around chickens, I'll also link that video for you. The older hens are very curious about the chicks when they make their first appearance, so I really think the chicks appreciate the barrier between them. When it's time to move them in for the night, I just place one of the pens inside their stall. These pens have small doors that come in handy because what we do is crack the doors open just enough for the chicks to get through, but not big enough for the older hens to get through. The chicks eat a different feed from the adult hens, so it's important to keep their feed separate. The chick's diet is higher in protein, while the hen's diet is much richer in calcium. Some people recommend not using calcium-enriched layer feed if you have roosters, as they won't be able to expel the extra calcium through eggshells when laying. If you choose not to use calcium-fortified feed, many people supplement with oyster shells, eggshells, or other forms of calcium that the hens can pick at separately, keeping them away from the rooster's feed. At this point, the chicks are ready to free range with the big girls. As you can see, they're having a great time and everyone is getting along. You might notice a few small spats here and there, But the most important part is ensuring there's a safe place for the chicks to escape if they find themselves in a bullying situation where the older hens can't reach them. We do this by cracking one of the pen doors, but as long as there's enough space to run, they usually just run away on their own. As you can see, the chicks are grooming themselves, and overall, they are very low stress and very happy. This was a successful integration, to say the least. If you plan to free-range chickens, it's important to make sure they have good recall or that they come when called. We like to do this with Grubterra treats, and as you can see, when I call my chickens, they will follow me immediately, almost instantly, and it's not because they love me, but because they love the food I offer. We use Grubterra chicken treats because they contain added calcium, unlike mealworms, which aren't as nutrient dense. These are black soldier fly larvae, so they're actually really good for them, and as you can see, they also think it tastes great. We have a discount code for Grubterra, which I will share below, so make sure to use the code OKABUT for a discount. So far, everyone who has ordered them and whom I've spoken to has loved them as well. It's really important to train them to come to the bag or respond to your voice with treats. If you see a predator while they are free-ranging, they might not want to come back otherwise. Although the chicks are a little slower to get inside, as you can see, they are catching onto the treats pretty quickly, which makes bringing them in much easier. Fly is by no means a trained herding dog, but he's starting to catch on to helping us bring the chicks in at night. This next one gave him a little bit of sass. Even though chick care can seem a bit intimidating if you've never done it before, the most important thing is ensuring they have food, water, clean shelter, the right temperature, and environment, as well as maybe a little stimulation and excitement to keep them from picking on each other. It's really not as hard as it might seem at first, and once you've raised one set of chicks, the rest become pretty much second nature. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Also, don't forget to share your best chick raising tips in the comments below. Additionally, I have linked all the resources along with a full blog post with all the directions for you in the description below. Thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next video.